My girlfriend said. From now on, I decide when we spend time together, stop bothering me. After I spent 2 years rearranging my life around her schedule. I didn't argue. I just nodded, went home, and checked the one thing. On my phone she had forgotten existed, but by the time she found out, it was already too late to take it back. Vanessa and I had been together 2 years. She worked in PR coordination for an events company that ran galas, product launches, things with open bars, and step and repeat banners. I did data analysis for a logistics company, the kind of job where you learn to notice patterns before you notice feelings. She had a habit of deciding plans at the last possible minute, then acting surprised when I had already made other arrangements. 3 months earlier, she had canceled a dinner with my parents 2 hours before they arrived, texting only something came up, no explanation, no apology when she got home. A few weeks after that, she went on a 2-day work trip with colleagues and never mentioned it to me until I saw the location tag on someone else's story. I never confronted her about either one. I just filed them away. The way you note a delayed shipment, the way you note anything that tells you what to expect next time. She would tell people she was low maintenance about relationships, that she didn't believe in clinginess. What she meant was that the maintenance ran one direction. That Thursday night, I asked her if we could lock down plans for my birthday, 2 weeks out. I had asked the same question, the same casual way, 3 or 4 times that month already. This time, her face changed before she even answered. Her best friend Priya was sitting on the couch, scrolling her phone, half paying attention, the way people do when they think a conversation doesn't concern them yet. The apartment smelled like the candle she always burned on weeknights, vanilla and something sharper underneath it. Vanessa set her glass down on the counter, not hard, just deliberate, the kind of motion that tells you a decision has already been made before the sentence comes out of someone's mouth. I've been thinking about this, she said, arms crossed, looking at me the way she'd look at a vendor who'd missed a deadline. From now on, I decide when we spend time together. Stop bothering me. I looked at her for a second. Priya looked up from her phone like she hadn't expected it said out loud either, especially not in front of her. Okay, I said. Can I ask what brought this on? I just need people to stop assuming they have a claim on my calendar, Vanessa said, her voice level, almost rehearsed. It's not personal, it's a boundary. I'm allowed to have one. Something in me went quiet right then. Not angry. I wasn't angry yet, that came later. Right then I was just cold. Something inside me went still and started measuring exactly what I was looking at. I thought about the dinner with my parents, canceled 2 hours out with no explanation. I thought about the work trip I only found out about from a stranger's social media story. I thought about how a boundary usually points in 2 directions, and hers only ever seemed to point at me. Sure, I said. That's fine. Whatever you need. She seemed almost thrown by how easily I agreed, like she'd been braced for an argument and now didn't know where to put the energy. Priya glanced between us, the way people do when they can feel a room has shifted but can't say exactly how. I'm glad you understand, Vanessa said, picking her glass back up. I knew you would. You're not like other guys about this stuff. I didn't say anything else. I picked up my jacket from the back of the chair, told her I'd talk to her later, and let myself out. The hallway outside her apartment was quiet, just the hum of the elevator arriving, and I stood there for a second longer than I needed to before stepping in. In the elevator going down, I pulled out my phone and opened my email, scrolling back 3 months, to a confirmation I had completely forgotten still existed, sent long before any of this had a name. I texted Marcus that night, same as I did most weeks. Marcus and I had been friends since college, and for the last year he'd been working as an event manager at a boutique hotel downtown, the kind of place that hosted weddings and corporate galas on alternating weekends, always fully booked through the fall. We usually messaged about pickup basketball on Saturdays, nothing more than that. You free this weekend? I asked him. Need to get out of my own head a little. Can't? Man, I'm buried. He wrote back. We've got this gala Saturday, biggest one we've done all year. Guest list is a nightmare. Half these RSVPs don't even match who's actually showing up. I asked which company was running it. He named the events firm, the same one Vanessa worked for, the one she'd be coordinating that exact weekend. Small world, I wrote. You know them? He asked. I told him I knew someone who worked there. I didn't say more than that. But I sat there for a minute afterward, looking at the screen, realizing Marcus was standing exactly where I needed someone to be standing, for reasons that had nothing to do with me asking him to. I didn't text Vanessa again that week. I didn't bring up the gala, Didn't ask if she still wanted me there. Didn't mention I'd seen the confirmation email sitting in my inbox from 3 months back, my name on the guest list, never removed by anyone. I went about my days the way I always did. I ran my reports at work, made dinner for one, watched something forgettable before bed, kept my evenings exactly as ordinary as they'd always been. If anyone had asked, I would have said I felt calm. I think I actually was. There was nothing left to argue about, nothing left to wait on her to decide. On Friday night, I sat at my kitchen table and reread the confirmation one more time on my phone, the RSVP still marked attending, the date still Saturday. I closed the laptop without replying to it, without telling her anything at all. I didn't need to ask her permission for something she had already given me 3 months ago. Saturday night, 7:40, the hotel ballroom downtown. Crystal chandeliers ran the length of the ceiling, and the check-in desk near the entrance was glass-topped, lit from underneath, lined with tablets for scanning names. Servers moved through the crowd with trays, and a low-string quartet played somewhere near the bar. Vanessa stood near the center of the room, close to a cluster of senior staff from her company, her boss included. The kind of position you take when you want to be seen doing your job well. I hadn't walked in yet. Marcus was still at the check-in desk, scrolling through names on his tablet, about to find a discrepancy he had no way of knowing belonged to me. Marcus moved through the lobby first, badge clipped to his blazer, tablet held flat against his forearm, walking with the easy, unhurried pace of someone who knew exactly where every exit and every problem in the building was. People near the check-in desk straightened slightly as he approached, the way staff do around someone whose job is to fix things before they become visible to guests. I crossed the lobby from the entrance a few steps behind him, the marble floor catching the chandelier light in long pale streaks. A security guard near the door glanced at my jacket, asked for my name, checked it against a printed list clipped to a board, and waved me through without much interest. I kept walking toward the desk where Marcus had already started speaking with one of the junior coordinators, her expression shifting from polite to confused as she scrolled through something on her screen. Vanessa noticed the activity at the desk before she noticed me specifically. Her first expression was mild irritation, the practiced look of someone interrupted mid-conversation by something administrative and beneath her. Then her eyes moved past Marcus and landed on me. And the irritation dissolved into something else entirely, a half-second of total stillness, her glass frozen halfway to her mouth. A moment later, she saw Tyler, a colleague of hers I recognized from her phone screen weeks earlier, standing close enough to the desk that the connection between them was impossible to miss, and her face went pale and away. No amount of makeup could soften. Marcus held up the tablet, professional, entirely unbothered, his voice pitched just loud enough to carry to the cluster of people standing near the desk. "I've got 2+1s registered under the same reservation," he said, scrolling with one finger. "Daniel and Tyler. Which one's confirmed for tonight?" A coordinator standing beside Vanessa's boss turned her head toward us, drink paused halfway to her mouth, clearly listening now. "That's a mistake," Vanessa said quickly. Stepping closer to the desk, her voice dropping into the clipped tone she used at work. "That reservation should only have one name on it." "It's not a mistake," I said. My voice was even, almost bored. "I confirmed that RSVP 3 months ago. Before anyone decided, unilaterally, who gets to schedule time with who." Vanessa's boss, a woman in her 50s with a sharp, professional voice, set her glass down on a nearby tray and looked directly at Vanessa. "Is there a problem with the guest list?" "No," Vanessa said, too quickly. "No problem. There's clearly some confusion," her boss said, glancing between the tablet and the 2 men standing on either side of her employee. "We can't have 2+1s under one staff reservation. That's a liability issue." Tyler, standing a few feet away, suddenly found something urgent to check on his phone, took 2 steps backward, and didn't look at either of us again for the rest of the night. "There's no problem," I said, turning to Marcus. "I'll just need my badge." Marcus printed it without another word, the small machine humming beside him, and handed it to me with a brief professional nod. He turned back to the next guest in line as if nothing unusual had happened at all, already scanning the following name on his list. Vanessa stood frozen near the desk, her boss still watching her, with an expression that had shifted from curiosity to quiet disapproval. The coordinator beside them leaned toward another colleague and said something too low for me to hear, though I didn't need to hear it to know what it was about. I walked toward the bar without looking back, ordered something I didn't really want, and stood near the window for a while, watching the room continue around me as though nothing had just rearranged itself at the front desk. A few minutes later, I noticed the coordinator who had been standing beside Vanessa's boss quietly slip away toward the side hallway, the same direction Vanessa and her boss had gone. Whatever was being said back there wasn't loud enough to carry, but the body language of everyone walking past that hallway told its own version of the story. Glances held a beat too long, conversations that paused and then restarted at a lower volume. The bartender slid my drink across without asking what I wanted twice. The kind of red you get when someone's been doing the job long enough to know who needs a minute alone. I leaned against the bar and watched the room recalibrate around the empty space where Vanessa had been standing, the cluster of senior staff slowly drifting apart, finding other conversations, the way a crowd does when the center of gravity disappears. Marcus caught my eye once from across the lobby, gave a small, almost imperceptible nod, and went back to scanning the next guest's badge like the last 5 minutes hadn't happened at all. The last thing I saw before I walked toward the bar was Vanessa's hand, fingers spread flat against the edge of the glass desk, gripping it the way someone grips something solid when the floor underneath them has just changed. Behind me, I heard her boss's voice drop lower, asking Vanessa to step into the side hallway for a moment. I didn't turn around to watch. I didn't need to. Some scenes finish better when you only hear them ending. Marcus called me the next afternoon, his voice flat and matter-of-fact, the way it always was when he was just reporting what he'd seen rather than editorializing on it. He told me Vanessa had been pulled into a side room by her boss for almost 20 minutes, and that by the time she came back out, Tyler had already left the gala without saying goodbye to anyone, including her. One of the coordinators told Marcus, off the record, that Vanessa spent the rest of the night apologizing for a personal misunderstanding to anyone who would listen. I sat with that for a second after he hung up. One sentence, quiet, no triumph in it. It was already over before I walked in. I just made sure everyone else in that room could see it too. I didn't call Vanessa back. I didn't reply to the 3 texts she'd sent me overnight, each one a little more clipped than the last. Instead, I opened my phone and started scrolling through apartment listings without much urgency, already thinking about which weekend would make sense to start packing my things out of her place for good. Vanessa called 4 times that Sunday. When I didn't answer, she switched to texting, then to long voice memos explaining that I had humiliated her in front of her entire team and that what I'd done was vindictive and immature. She never once mentioned the sentence she'd said in her own living room 4 days earlier, the one that had started all of it. In her version, the story began at the gala, not before it. By Monday afternoon, she showed up at my office building during lunch, waiting near the lobby entrance where my coworkers would have to walk past her to get to the elevator banks. A few of them clocked the scene immediately, the kind of thing people remember and bring up later in the break room without meaning any harm by it. She asked me, in front of 2 people I worked with, why I was punishing her for having boundaries, her voice loud enough to carry across the lobby. "You said you'd decide when we spend time together," I told her, my tone calm, the same flat register I'd used at the gala. "I just confirmed when. You weren't wrong that it wasn't up to you alone." She didn't have an answer for that. Instead, she repeated herself almost word for word, that she had a right to set limits, that I was twisting something simple into something it wasn't. One of my coworkers shifted his weight beside me, clearly debating whether to step away or stay. She still hadn't said anything close to an apology, not for the gala, not for the months that came before it. She genuinely seemed to believe the only thing that had gone wrong was that people had found out, not that anything she'd done was the actual problem. By the time she finally walked away, 2 more people from my floor had seen the whole exchange, and I could already tell it would be a topic at lunch the next day, whether I wanted it to be or not. 3 weeks later, Marcus texted me out of nowhere on a Tuesday afternoon. His hotel was hosting another event for the same firm, smaller this time, a client dinner rather than a full gala. He said he'd run into one of the coordinators from that night, the same one who'd been standing beside Vanessa's boss near the check-in desk when everything happened. She mentioned Vanessa, Marcus wrote. Said Tyler requested a transfer off her account team right after the gala. Apparently didn't want to be anywhere near her on a project. I read the message twice, sitting at my kitchen table with my coffee going cold beside me. I hadn't asked Marcus to keep tabs on any of it. He just happened to still be working with that company on other events, and people in that world talk to each other, the way they always do. A few days after that, Marcus mentioned, almost as an aside in a longer text about something else entirely, that 2 of Vanessa's closer coworkers had started skipping the lunch group she used to organize every Friday, the same group she'd told me about more than once with a kind of quiet pride, like it was proof of how well-liked she was at work. He didn't know exactly why, only that it had been noticed by enough people to come up in conversation. I didn't ask him to dig further. I didn't need to. The picture was already forming on its own, one small fact at a time, the way these things usually do once a person's reputation starts moving without their permission. That Friday, the lunch group met without her for the first time in over a year. I moved into a one-bedroom apartment near the river that same month, smaller than the place I'd shared with Vanessa, but mine, fully mine, in a way nothing had been in 2 years. The lease had my name on it and no one else's. The first Saturday there, I made dinner for one, real dinner, not takeout eaten standing at the counter. I cooked pasta, opened the kitchen window because the room got warm, and ate at my own small table without checking my phone once to see if someone had finally decided what time worked for them that week. Afterward, I sat on the floor with my back against the couch, dirty plates still stacked in the sink, and stayed there for a while, not doing anything in particular, not waiting for anything either. Nobody texted to ask where I was. Nobody needed to, and for the first time in longer than I could remember, that silence didn't feel like something missing. Vanessa had chosen control over her own time and her own image, over me, and over the people who had actually helped build that image with her in the first place. 2 months later, she was losing both of those things, one piece at a time, in front of the same circles that used to admire how put together she seemed. Marcus told me first, over coffee near his hotel one weekday morning, the two of us catching up the way we always did, nothing unusual about the conversation until it turned. He'd run a corporate dinner the night before for the same events firm, smaller scale than the gala, mostly internal staff and a few clients. Vanessa had been there, working the room the way she always had, except this time no one was working it back toward her. She was sitting alone for most of the night, he said, stirring his coffee slowly without really looking at it. Same table the whole time. A couple people said hi on their way past, kept walking. He told me she hadn't been included in the promotion track that quietly opened up that quarter, the one she used to mention constantly, the one she'd told me twice she was practically a lock for. A junior coordinator got it instead, someone 2 years behind her on paper. I asked him how he knew all of this. He said one of the servers working the event, a woman Vanessa used to be close with on these jobs, had mentioned it to him almost in passing, the way people mention things once they've stopped feeling the need to protect someone's reputation. She was on the phone in the hallway before the dinner even started, Marcus added, setting his cup down. Server said she didn't mean to overhear it, but Vanessa was practically yelling at whoever was on the other end. Something like, "I don't even know who decides anything for me anymore." I didn't say anything for a second. I thought about the glass desk at the gala, her hand gripping the edge of it like the floor had shifted. I thought about a living room 2 months earlier, the exact sentence that had started all of it, something about deciding things, about being bothered. One sentence settled in me, quiet, nothing dramatic about it. It felt like setting down something heavy I had been carrying for longer than I wanted to admit, even to myself. Marcus kept talking, something about the next event he had to staff that weekend, but I wasn't fully listening anymore. I was thinking about how completely she had gotten the exact thing she'd once demanded, full control over her own calendar, her own decisions, and how hollow that control had turned out to be once there was no one left around her who actually cared what she decided. He told me one more thing before we left the coffee shop that morning, almost as an afterthought, the kind of detail people mention only after the main story has already landed. The promotion that passed her over had come with a new reporting structure, and Vanessa now answered directly to the junior coordinator who'd gotten the role instead of her, the same young woman she used to assign tasks to without a second thought. Marcus said the coordinator who told him about it hadn't said it with any satisfaction, just a kind of flat, observational tone, the way you'd describe weather. I thought about that for a while after Marcus left for his next shift. 2 years of being told when I was allowed to matter to her schedule, and now she was the one waiting on someone else's calendar, someone else's decisions about what she was and wasn't included in. I didn't feel anything sharp about it, no satisfaction sitting in my chest the way I might have expected. It just felt accurate, like a column in a spreadsheet finally balancing out to zero. I still live in the apartment near the river. I picked the paint color for the bedroom myself, a flat gray-blue Vanessa would have called boring back when she still had opinions about my walls. Most Saturdays I decide what I'm doing the night before, sometimes the morning of, and there's no one waiting on a verdict from me about any of it. I ran into Tyler once, months later, at a coffee shop near my office, both of us reaching for the same table near the window. We didn't talk about Vanessa. There wasn't really anything left to say about her that either of us needed to say out loud. Marcus and I still play basketball on Saturdays, same as always. Nothing about that ever needed to change. Nobody decides my time for me anymore. Not even me. When I don't feel like deciding anything at all. That's the part she never understood. Freedom was never a schedule. It was simply not needing one.